All right, today we are jumping into one of the most dramatic stories of sudden deliverance you'll find anywhere. It's an incredible tale from the book of 2 Kings about famine, about fear, and about a promise that was so big it just seemed impossible. And that, right there, is the question that drives this whole story. Seriously, what do you do? Put yourself in their shoes. You're starving, you're trapped, and then, out of nowhere, you hear news that could solve everything. Do you leap for joy, or do you assume it's a trap? So let's get the scene straight. The city of Samaria is completely besieged. People are starving to death. And then, this unbelievable news filters in. The enemy army, the Syrians, they've just vanished, left their entire camp, all their food, everything just sitting there. But the king, he doesn't see a miracle. He sees a trap. And you gotta understand that the king's paranoia didn't just come out of nowhere. This quote perfectly captures the mood. Just the day before, when the prophet Elisha predicted this would happen, one of the king's own officers just laughed in his face, saying this. It was pure sarcasm. That's the level of doubt we're dealing with. So what does the king do? He immediately jumps to the worst possible conclusion. He says, no way, this has to be a trick. He's convinced the Syrians are hiding out in the fields, just waiting to lure them out of the city and finish them off for good. For him, this isn't deliverance, it's the final nail in the coffin. But then one of his servants comes up with a pretty sensible plan. He says, look, let's not just rush out there, but let's not just sit here either. Let's send a small group of scouts on the few horses we have left. It's a risk, but it's a smart one. And it's this fascinating moment, right? A potential miracle is knocking at the door, but they're still going to use good old-fashioned common sense to check it out. So the scouts head out, probably expecting to find an ambush. But what they actually find? Well, it changes everything. This is the big turning point in the story. I mean, look at this. The gap between what they feared and what was real is just incredible. They were expecting a deadly trap. What they found was a totally empty camp. They were looking for hidden enemies. Instead, they found abandoned riches. They thought they were riding out to certain death, but what they found was total, absolute deliverance. And this is where you see this amazing intersection of human action and, well, what the text would call divine providence. See, the scouting mission was a human plan, but the reason the camp was empty, according to the story, that was all God. He made the entire Syrian army hear the sound of a giant imaginary army, which sent them running for their lives in a full-blown panic. So the scouts race back with the news, and just like that, the whole city's mood flips. The fear breaks, and this massive wave of starving people floods out of the gates to claim everything the Syrians left behind. And in doing so, they are about to fulfill a prophecy with shocking precision. Remember this. This was the impossible prophecy Elisha had made just one day earlier, and he wasn't vague about it. He gave exact prices. It must have sounded absolutely insane when he first said it. I mean, they were in a famine so bad, people were paying a fortune for a donkey's head. So you can just imagine the scene, right? It's this flood of starving people pouring out of the city and plundering the camp. And that word is key because in ancient warfare, that was a totally legal thing to do. The spoils of the enemy belonged to the victor. So this is God's justice, turning the tables completely. And what happens when you flood a market with that much supply? The prices don't just drop, they absolutely plummet. Down to the exact price Elisha had foretold, 1 single shekel for a measure of fine flour. It's just perfect. This chart really puts it into perspective. Just look at the price of barley during the famine, through the roof. And then after, it hits rock bottom. The economy of the entire city was flipped on its head overnight. The prophecy wasn't just kind of right, it was right on the money, down to the last shekel. But the story isn't over, because there's another prophecy hanging in the air, and this one is a lot darker. It's all about that skeptical officer we talked about earlier. Remember, this is exactly what Elisha told the guy right after he mocked the idea of a miracle. Talk about a chilling prediction. You're going to see it. You will witness this abundance with your own eyes, but you won't get a single bite. So how does this play out? It's just tragically ironic. The king puts this very officer in charge of crowd control at the city gate. But the tide of desperate, starving people is just too strong. It's a stampede. And he's right in the middle of it, and he gets trampled to death. He died literally at the gateway to the blessing he refused to believe in. Okay, so as we wrap this up, what are we left with? It's this incredible story loaded with powerful ideas about faith, doubt, and what a miracle even looks like. So, what are the big takeaways from all this? First, that God's promises can come true with mind-blowing precision, turning a nightmare into a feast overnight. But it's also a huge warning, right? That officer's doubt didn't stop the miracle. It just stopped him from getting in on it. He was close enough to see it, but his unbelief meant he couldn't actually experience it. And that really leaves us with this one last pretty challenging question. This whole account suggests that just seeing something isn't the same as believing it. So it makes you ask, when a huge promise is fulfilled, what's the real difference between the people who get to be a part of it and those who are stuck on the outside just watching?